Hi, unfortunately, this selector is not compliant with the standard ERINC 410. It delivers actually a binary coding. ERINC 410 is something like that, so it is called also 2 of 5. So for each digit there are 5 lines, and 2 bits are at low level for each digit here. So you can see the coding table. Therefore, I have designed this crude selector. As you can see, each bit can be selected one by one. Here we have the coding for some frequencies which are used for the approach of Roissy-Charles de Gaulle Airport. You can see these frequencies here. The first thing to test is the auto-positioner system. We can see here on the left the frequency in megahertz, and here we have the frequency in kilohertz after the decimal point. Currently the frequency is 118.15 megahertz. So let's try to change the frequency. Okay, so for example, I will change to the last frequency. Here 131 megahertz, decimal 20 or point 20. Here we can change the figure for 10 megahertz, which is 3. 3 corresponds to the setting of lines B and C. So first, the better thing is to deselect everything. Okay, so I will activate B and C. Okay, the second one is A and B. Okay, third one A and C. Okay, and the last one B and E. Okay, so normally the frequency should be 131.20. So it is the case here, 131 and 0.20. Okay, so this thing works. We can test another one in the middle here, 121.15. So first A and C. Second one A and B. It is already the case. Third one A and B. And the last one C and D. And we have 131, something is wrong. Okay, so there is a problem with this micro switch. This one doesn't work. Okay, I have replaced by this one here. Okay, 121.15. So this thing works. For the second test, I have connected the antenna input to this synthesizer. The level is set at 300 microvolts. Okay, the modulation internal 1 kilohertz. Okay, sine. Okay, and a modulation depth of 30%, and the output is activated. We can see on the oscilloscope the audio output. So let's increase the modulation depth. Okay, so we can see that we have some distortion above 40% approximately. And there is a first issue here. Let's see now the input level. Currently the level is 300 microvolts, 100 microvolts. We can see that at 10 microvolts we can see some noise. Okay, we still have something at 3 microvolts. I think that the main problem is the distortion of the audio signal. So we can see that the automatic gain control works. You can see that we have a constant audio level when there is a change of the input voltage here. It's not perfect, but it's correct. We have some distortion when the input level is 25 millivolts, which is approximately minus 20 dBm. Let's see if we can solve this issue of saturation. Okay, so we can see that we have a saturation of the audio signal when the modulation depth is above 40%, something like that. We can see here the schematic. The audio output is here. This is a common collector. The signal is fed to this relay. This permits to select between the transmit and the receive mode. The audio signal is fed to this potentiometer, so we can see that there is an error here on the wiring, but I think it is only on the schematic. The wiper should be connected here to the base, like the other one here, of course. And the output signal is on the transformer here. So there is an adjustment of the gain R118, which is on the other side here. Okay, so you can see that if the gain is reduced, this thing works perfectly. So let's see at 85% solution depth. Okay, so it is better, but not perfect. You can see that there is another effect here. Okay, the signal is good up to 50% modulation depth approximately. The audio signal is available here on that node. There is a diode here. So this diode is actually a switch. It is called the squelch gate. Okay, so there is a circuit which permits to turn on or off this diode. So in normal mode there is a current flowing through this diode. So this diode permits to transmit the audio signal to this transistor here. Okay, and the signal is fed to the audio amplifier. What we can do first is to verify the signal on that point. Okay, so we can see that the signal is not saturated on that point. Okay, so let's increase the modulation. Okay, so 85%. Okay, so there is some residue of high frequency here. Okay, so this is the squelch circuit schematic. The audio signal is on that line here. So this is the diode detector here, the filter, as we have seen. The audio signal is fed to the squelch diode here through this capacitor. Okay, so let's see the signal on that point. So we should have the same signal here. Okay, so we can see that we have a saturation on that point here. Okay, so the signal is perfect here, but it is saturated on that point. We can decrease the modulation depth. Okay, we can see that if the modulation depth is below a given value, the saturation disappears. But if you analyze that circuit, you can see that it is impossible to have a saturation at that point, and there is nothing which permits to saturate the voltage. So there is a problem with that circuit. So actually I compared this circuit to the wiring which is on that plate here, and actually it is different. The squelch circuit of this unit doesn't correspond to this schematic. Okay, so I did a quick reverse engineering, and the real schematic is this one. The audio signal is fed actually to the cathode of the squelch gate here. The audio signal is on the anode. Okay, and there is here a resistor which is on the other side of the plate here. Okay, so the input is here, the output is here. When the squelch is activated, this transistor is on. So this permits to connect this point more or less to the ground. In that case, this diode is reversed biased, and therefore there is no audio signal on that point. But we can see that if the input signal here is higher than the voltage on that point, this diode will be off, and therefore the audio signal here will be clamped to a voltage which depends on the bias of that point. This voltage is approximately 12 volts. Okay, so therefore, if the voltage here is above 12 volts minus 1 voltage drop here, at the output we will have voltage close to 12 volts, and it is what we have actually. So the issue is that the bias voltage on that point is too high. If we reduce this bias voltage here by changing one resistor here, so therefore there will be enough margin to avoid the saturation. Okay, so I am going to connect the resistor decade box in parallel to this resistor, and we will see if we can solve this issue. Okay, so I have connected the resistor decade box in parallel to this resistor. Okay, so currently the resistor is 120k, so the effect is minimum. So let's see if we add 20k in parallel. Look at that. Okay, so we have a beautiful signal. You can check also the signal at the audio output of this unit. Okay, so we can see we have a much better signal. Okay, so this is without the modification, and this is when a resistor of 20k is added. So there is a small distortion. So this is due to the first issue, the adjustment of the gain. Okay, so we can reduce the gain maybe a little bit more. Okay, perfect. Okay, we can measure the distortion. Okay, I will connect the output to the distortion meter, which is this one here. Okay, the first thing to do is to calibrate 100%. Okay, and we can measure the distortion, which is 1.5%. So let's see at 80%. Okay, at 80%, it's approximately 2% distortion. We can increase a little bit, 85% modulation depth. Calibration, 2.4% distortion. For the final test, I bought 15 meters of RG58 cable from Yaliandu from China. First, let's see the losses of this cable. First, we need to normalize the measurement. Okay, so let's start with 50 megahertz, it's okay. And stop frequency 500 megahertz, for example. Okay. Normalization. Okay, perfect. And now I will connect the Chinese cable. We can see that the loss is approximately minus 2 dB at 120 megahertz approximately. So this is not so bad. For the test, I have built this ground plane antenna. The length of the radiance is 70 centimeters. The length of the antenna itself is adjustable, maximum length 60 centimeters. For the test of the antenna, I will use this directional coupler from Narda, model 3020A. The tracking generator of the spectrum analyzer is fed to the input port here. The antenna is connected to the output, and the reflected power is fed to the input. There is a 5 dB pad attenuator here to stabilize the output impedance of the tracking generator. First, what we have to do is to normalize the response. So for that, I will disconnect the antenna. Okay, so this is the normal mode. There is an attenuation of 30 dB approximately. Okay, so I will normalize this curve. Okay, so we can test also with the 50 ohm load here. Okay, so we can see that we have an attenuation of minus 40 dB. That means that almost all the power is transmitted to the load. Okay, so I am going to reconnect the antenna. Okay, so we can see that we have a resonance here at a frequency of 110 megahertz. This is outside the aviation band. So what we can do is to decrease the length of the antenna in order to have resonance close to 120 megahertz here. So I cannot do it in real time, but I will try to reduce maybe by 5 centimeters. Okay, I have reduced the size by 5 centimeters approximately. And now we have 118 megahertz.
On a eu 229 et ensuite on descend du haut à 7-0 à France 42 Hôtel Mac.
169 après la 586 Victor.
Allez, bonjour, France 22 Victor X-Ray. JLS 08 droite à France 22 Victor X-Ray. À la droite 4060, on intercepte le lock 08 droite, on descend niveau 6-0 à France 42 Hôtel Mac. 189 sur le guide, France 42 Hôtel Mac.
Bonjour, Alpine H3 Mac Echo. Vectors ILS 08 right, Alpine H3 Mac Echo.
27-0, 229 à France 22 Victor X-Ray. Tour 29, France 42 Hôtel Mac.
Descend expect level 60, Alpine H3 Mac Echo.
Alors le 6-0 à France 22 Victor X-Ray. Alors bonjour à France 959 Laurent. 222 minimum en lice et on intercepte le lock 08 droite au cap Air France 959. Droite cap 060 vers 5000 pieds, 1021 pour les ILS 08 droite Air France 22 Victor X-Ray.
Arrival Aircreed 9 on above. Bonjour. Aircreed 9 on above, 0 direct.
Descending altitude 5000 to QNH 1021, reducing speed to 20 knots, Alpine H3 Mac Echo. We expect that descent to copy for the right on Alpine H3 Mac Echo. Right is 060, cleared ILS 08 right Alpine H3 Mac Echo. And we expect that the descent Alpine H3 Mac Echo.
10 to 5000 feet, Aircreed 9 on above.
Avec la tour 120 décimal 9 Air France 22 Victor X-Ray, bonne journée, au revoir. 5000 pieds, 1021, autorisé ILS 8 droite Air France 959.
186 miles minimum, Alpine H3 Mac Echo.
182 959. Descente niveau 70 à 187 4060, log 08 droite à 187
060, ILS 0 right, Aircreed 9 on above.
Tower 120 decimal 9, Alpine H3 Mac Echo, bonne journée.
Niveau 60 182 à 187 5000 pieds, 1021, autorisé ILS 8 droite à 187 169, 120.9 Air France 959, au revoir. On réduit 169 à 187
And Aircreed 9 on above, may you use our speed? 20 knots, Aircreed 9 on above. 0 knots minimum until width position 6 miles 180, Aircreed 9 on above. Bonjour, Air France 69, Alpha Romeo.
69 Alpha Romeo.
On descend vers niveau 80 pour la 08 droite, Air France 69 Alpha Romeo. À gauche au cap 230, Air France 69 Alpha Romeo. 209, bye. 9 on above.
Air France 1085. Radar IA 08 droite, aurait lieu 232, Air France 1085.
On descend vers le niveau 60 à gauche au cap unité, France 69 Alpha Romeo. 5000 pieds, 1021, on descend Air France 69 Alpha Romeo.
Attention, Théo 80, Air France 1085.
Bonjour madame, à gauche au cap 250 dans radar ILS 08 droite 64 Lima Papa.
5 Charlie Alpha. I can decrease intercept localizer 9 right.
222 la réduction, Air France 69 Alpha Romeo.
Pas de savoir, Air France 87
Gauche, cap unité 20 et nous sommes autorisés à l'IS 08 droite, Air France 69 Alpha Romeo.
On descend le C0 à droite 060, on intercepte le log 08 droite, Air France 1085.
182 Alpha Romeo. Bonjour, Air France 42 Juliette Papa. La GLS 08 droite, Air France 42 Juliette Papa. Allez, 162 20.9 69 Alpha Romeo, bye bye. Réduction 220 Air France 42 Juliette Papa.
On est établi sur l'Ac, Air France 1085, on se la on prend la descente. Alors on descend à 5000 pieds, on va rapidement intercepter le lac, autorisé ILS et 1021, c'est bien pris, Air France 1085.
À gauche au cap 200, on réduit vers 239, Air France 64 Lima Papa. Gauche cap 250, Air France 42 Juliette Papa.
Alors les confrères établis sur Glide, on réduit 182, Air France 1085.
108 0 France 64 Lima Papa. Descend niveau 80 Air France 42 Juliette Papa. À gauche cap 230, on descend niveau 70 Air France 42 Juliette Papa.
Oui, on descend dans l'entier, Air France 1085.
Jet 211, established ILS, runway 08 right. Way back. France 96, Sierra Papa, traversez la 08 gauche de l'autre côté, 121 980. American 49er, wind 100 degrees, 3 knots, runway 08 left, clear for takeoff. 1229 9, c'est noté, je relaye. Delta 264, hold short, up runway 08 left, 06 behind the traffic, you won't be long.
Bonjour à France 75 Alpha Zulu, établi à la 0 et droite, réduction 169.
Bonjour à 175 Alpha Zulu, 5 nautique d'un 330, vent 0,90 degrés 3 nœuds, piste 0,8 droite, autorisé atterrissage.
Autorisé atterrissage 0 et droite, France 75 Alpha Zulu.
Upper 3 Victor Charlie, bonjour, from Tango 2, line up runway 08 left and wait. France 209, traversez le 08 gauche de ce côté 121 980. D64, yes, 6 cross, runway 08 left, after crossing, ground 121980. American 490, contact departure, bye-bye.
American 49 Heavy, good day, be well.
You too. Digit 211, hold short, runway 08 left, holding point 06. Upper 32 Victor Charlie, wind 050 degrees 3 knots, runway 08 left, clear for takeoff.
Bonjour à France 19 Bravo Uniforme.
Bonjour à France 19 en Boniforme, sur nautique d'un 320, vent 0,70 degrés 3 nœuds, piste 08 droite, autorisé atterrissage.
Atterrissage en piste 0 et droite, 19 Bravo Uniforme.
France 890, bonjour de Tango 3, alignez-vous piste 08 gauche et attendez.
Tango 3, on fait une piste 08 gauche et on attend à France 890.
Kilo Jet 211, cross runway 08 left, after crossing ground 121.980.
Bonjour à France 10 61, établi à la 0 et droite.
France 10 61, bonjour sur nautique d'un 319, vent 120 degrés 3 nœuds, piste 08 droite, autorisé atterrissage.
Autorisé atterrissage 08 droite, France 10 61.
Alpine 3 Québec to Charlie, contact departure, bye-bye.
Departure Alpine 3 Victor Charlie.
France 75 Alpha Zulu, maintenez avant piste 08 gauche, point d'attente, tir à 6.
Double tour, bonjour à France 89 Alpha Tango, 6 nautique finale, il y a 08 droite.
France 89 Alpha Tango, bonjour 3 nautique 5 d'un 320, vent 0,90 degrés 3 nœuds, piste 08 droite, autorisé atterrissage.
Autorisé atterrissage 08 droite à France 89 Alpha Tango.
France 890, contactez le départ en vol.
Départ en barre 890.
France 19 en uniforme, laissez rouler, tir à 6, traversez la 08 gauche de l'autre côté 121 980, allez hop. France 88 Québec Vélo, bonjour, 4 nautiques d'un Embraer 190, vent 0,90 degrés 3 nœuds, piste 08 droite, autorisé atterrissage.
Piste 08 droite, autorisé atterrissage à France 88 Québec Vélo.
Bonjour, France 76 Victor Québec, ILS 08 droite.
Bonjour, France 76 Victor Québec, 3 nautiques et demi derrière un 220, 0,80 degrés 4 nœuds, 08 droite, vous êtes autorisé atterrissage.
Autorisé atterrissage 08 droite, France 76 Victor Québec.
France 10 61, maintenez avant la 08 gauche au point d'attente tir à 6. France 27 Lima Kilo, autorisé décollage 8 gauche, 0,90 degrés 4 nœuds.
Departure direction Alpha Golf Revoir.
France 89 Alpha Tango, maintenez avant piste 08 gauche, point d'attente tir à 6. France 10 61, traversée, après la traversée 21 98, au revoir. France 89 Alpha Tango, le collègue devant traverse, je vous confirme, vous maintenez le tir à 6 quelques instants. France 27 Lima Kilo, contactez le départ, bonne journée.
Le départ, les Kilo, au revoir.
Bonjour à France 13 Québec Papa 168 droite.
Bonjour France 13 Québec Papa, 3 nautiques et demi derrière, un Embraer 190, vent 100 degrés 4 nœuds, 08 droite, vous êtes autorisé atterrissage.
Autorisé atterrissage 8 droite Air France 13 Québec Papa. Decolle Tower, bonjour à la 221 left 0 et right.
221, bonjour, 4 miles behind Airbus 318, wind 100 degrees 4 knots, runway 085, clear blend.
221 0 et right, take the large 21.
Rabia Maroc 828 Papa, contact departure, au revoir.
Contact departure, ok, check Papa, au revoir.
Bonjour à France 76 Papa Alpha.
76 Papa Alpha, bonjour, vous êtes 4 nautiques derrière un 736, vent 100 degrés 3 nœuds, piste 08 droite, autorisé atterrissage.
Le départ Air France 446, bonne journée.